Hey guys, so I'm going to be showing you guys my trick process today. How I create tricks, how I stay innovative, how I generally try not to end up like a copy of any yo-yoer, so that way I stay original to myself. And all my tricks are me, and have me in them. The first things you want to do, well, that I choose to do, is I start off with a basic mount that generally, everyone knows, like say double or nothing. The best thing I can say is you really want to try to break away from the norm. Don't do what you would normally do. Let's say this is a standard combo. Alright. Try to not land on all of the orthodox strings. You want to be unorthodox. Try to land on different strings that you normally would. Like say, I bet you never would have noticed that if you pulled the string here and did that, you would have a slack. And or say you land on different fingers, like do a double or nothing with your pinky, then that opens you up to be able to do things like this. And just, yeah, I mean, that wasn't really a good example because I just made that up just now, and basically if I were to go ahead and work on that and try to create a way to get out of the knot in a sense, it would probably end up being a pretty awesome trick. Alright, so the first thing I would like to say is landing on different fingers for tricks. Again, I'll start off with double or nothing. Try to land on different strings. Another cool one, try to land on, like, say, like pop out of different areas. Like most people, I see them just like, pop out from the top. Why not try popping from the back? Or maybe when you dismount, hold it and then land onto another string. Or say if you try to do like say a cold fusion type thing, don't go through to the other thing, try to pop out and pull strings and just, create. Try to add content depth to the trick. Well, alright, let's see. If you land on different fingers when you do tricks, like say your pinkies for a double or nothing, the rest of your hands are free. You can pop it off, go to your pointer finger, land back on, pop it out, and like, your tricks can get quite complex. You could try pointer finger, pinky, that way you have most of your hands pretty free. You can create a lot more using all of this string that's left over from that. Also, now, I'm going to show you some other things, like say, Houdini. Pretty orthodox. Most people I've seen use Houdini, but if you try using other fingers, say your pinky here, you could try popping around the back to land on similar strings, because you never know what you could come up with if doing things like this. And another thing, with say 1.5, try landing it on your thumb. Then you could even, and you want to experiment with like curling your fingers and everything, because if you curl it, you could come up with a lot of green triangles and all sorts of things. Or if you say do 1.5 with like all sorts of different fingers, you could really get some crazy looking things. Generally, what about even wrist mount? Why not try wrist mount with your pinky? And you could, like, you just go through and just try all sorts of things from mounts you already know to try to create something that is very different and try to look unique, because if you try to just, be inspired by videos, you end up becoming the same as another player. Generally, like, I guess some people would think that's a good thing, but in my opinion, being unique and original is the best, as it gets you noticed and it makes people want to see what you are capable of rather than seeing you copy someone else's tricks. Okay, so the next subject I'm going to touch on is tutorials. When you follow a tutorial, I think it's great to learn tricks from tutorials because tutorials are really helpful. It makes it so that way you get a ton of elements and they teach you how to do each element. And in my opinion, when you follow tutorials, you want to stay original to yourself at the same time as learning. So what I would think is you want to learn from the tutorial, but then take the trick and add your own flair to it, make it feel more like your style. For me personally, I actually really do love the cabin tutorials and the Spencer Berry tricks especially, the Enigma and Rancid Milk. Those two tricks are absolutely phenomenal by themselves, but they weren't exactly, they didn't suit my style as well because they looked a little weird flowing in with my tricks. So obviously I took elements from them and combined them with stuff that I already knew to create them. Like, say, the very beginning, like this. Like, that is a very unique mount, and you can create so much just by taking elements from other tricks and so forth. And like, that is a very unique looking mount. You can take bits and pieces and create mounts using tricks, things that you find from tutorials. Another thing is, don't be afraid of repetition. Like that is repetitive, but if you add that into the middle of a trick, it actually gives it quite a bit of flair, like so. And a really good thing to keep in mind is when you are learning, I know it may seem, oh, Jensen Kemet is my favorite yo-yo, I have to learn his exact style, I want to be cool just like him, if I end up like him, I could be world champion one day. That's not the case, because if he was already world champion before, it means it's over. People are done with this style. Generally, after people reach a certain high, that high becomes ridiculously popular, and people try to copy and imitate it. But then that becomes overused, overseen, overplayed. Everyone does it. Everyone has elements from Jensen Kemet. Everyone has elements from Hiroyuki Suzuki. Like the most, what people consider Japanese generic tech, like this sort of thing. Like when people like that sort of thing, very generic looking. Everyone has seen it. Like, that's why Hiroyuki Suzuki decided to freshen up last year and create some regens with his arms and all sorts of new things while sticking true to his own style, which is very admirable. And people like Janos, his tricks are absolutely spectacular, and even though he's a world champion, I seriously doubt that his style will ever go out of style, considering I don't think anyone else can imitate his style due to the complexity of his tricks. A good thing you want to do, though, is be inspired by players that you watch, but do not imitate. Imitate may be the most sincere form of flattery, but imitation is not the most sincere form of learning. Imitation makes you into a clone. It does not make you original, no matter how original the tricks you imitate may seem. Now, the next thing I want to touch base on is slacks. A really cool thing you can do with slacks is you can add them into any mount you want to. You just have to discover it first. Like, say, Houdini. when I was first starting slacks, I thought the only thing you could do was this. And then, like, hook it on and trapeze. I thought that was the only possible thing with Houdini because I didn't look carefully enough. And then I discovered this. That's another slack. And if you keep looking, you could even do this. There's another slack. You can add to Houdinis and create more slacks by using slacks you've already seen, like, say that, and more slacks. With double or nothing, generally, if you try other things, like, say double or nothing with your entire hand in, or even use the Yuki slack, or you could try stringing things together, like even the most basic slacks strung together can create something that looks really cool. You should never be afraid to just find a really cool looking mount and then just try to add a slack to it. It's not impossible, but sometimes it might be, like, say, a ladder mount. There's not really room for slack unless you, like, I think that's the only one I can think of, but then you're somewhat in a weird twisty Houdini, so you could try to go from there. Alright, so now for wrist mounts. Also slacks. You could definitely try doing a plethora of things to create a slack. And another thing to think of is fake slacks. Like, that may seem the most logical thing to do, but it can really add flair to do a fake slack, which is like this. It's virtually the same exact thing as doing this, but it just looks better. And in general, like, say 1.5. This may seem like, the only thing you can do, or like in a brother mount, how everyone I've seen this very used. Why not try and flip it back? You could really get, and another really lovely thing to do is to string things together. For slacks, what you just want to do is get into a mount and just look carefully to see what strings you can let go to create a slack. It's always good to experiment with everything, even if the slack looks like it's not going to work. You can try landing the slack in a different way, not onto the yo-yo, maybe land the slack onto your finger or onto another string, or just have the slack there, land the yo-yo onto another string and pull it taut. Because any bits of slack just give tricks an extra flair that you can't really capture with just normal string trickery. Now, another thing I want to touch on is, well, this is something actually quite new to me. They're called isolations. You might know them as the Mach 5s, these things. Everyone needs to give these a little bit more cred, because adding those to a combo can actually really give it a really nice flair. Because in my new video, Phoenix, I actually took a trick that I learned, Aperture by Andrew Miller. Hold on. Sorry. Added my own little poly thing to it, and I pulled it taut and did a mock. And Ryan G is probably one of the greatest isolators, whatever you want to call them, that I've seen. And generally speaking, you can do isolations with anything that has a kink in it. You can pull it taut and make a kink, or you can do it with any Mach 5y kind of thing. It's great to try to incorporate something of the sort into your trick because it can actually add a lot of extra flair. See, that was an isolation gyro. It's honestly actually one of the coolest things I've ever learned how to create. You have to be open to trying new things at new times, because if you stick to very orthodox, very normal styles of play, you won't break out of your shell and become a true innovator. You'll stay bubbled, you'll have yo-yoers blocked, because there's only so much you can do with constantly doing the same thing over and over again. When you do front throws, very, common combos look like that. A lot of brain twistery stuff. Honestly, I don't understand why people don't try doing rejections and slack in front style, because all I ever see really is chopsticks, boingy boings, a lot of brain twisters, split the atoms, that sort of stuff. People need to realize that when you do front style, that actually opens up an entirely new door of trick styles, because when you do front style, the yo-yo spinning in the opposite direction, so rejections there are some rejections that can actually only be done doing this. A huge inspiration for my front style is actually Alex Gallimore, because he's a lefty thrower that only throws front style, and actually Alexis JV, I don't know his actual last name because it's too long to pronounce for me. I'm lazy. But when you try doing things in front style, you could really create And another great thing about front style is the way it binds, because most people are familiar with this bind that can only be, that's generally done in front style for a snappier bind, because when you do it with side style, it ends you up with that kind of thing. Most people are quite familiar with that bind. When you branch out and you learn that there's actually way more ways to bind in front style, it actually creates an entirely new respect for front style. A lot of things that people misconceive about front style is that sometimes it can make your tricks seem unsmooth, because if you do like side style tricks, you're gonna have to do that sort of thing. But in reality, if you really look at it, though, it can actually make tricks appear way smoother. Like, say, that is an original follow combo by me. Kind of, not really. But if you do it in front style, it's cleaner because it automatically goes to a straight bind. Because with the front style bind, it can actually really revolutionize how some things are done. Because originally, I had a chopstick combo. That went a little bit like this. And I thought it was cool for a while, and then I actually tried doing it in front style, and then I created this bind. When you explore the possibilities of front style, it really gives you an appreciation for thinking in a whole new manner, because then it's almost like a new door has opened for yo-yoing, because when you explore the possibilities of front style, it's actually a lot more satisfying and gratifying, because you have to think in a whole new way, as the string won't reject, or the string slack will not swing around properly, or you could create a knot by swinging in a wrong way, or even just the way the yo-yo is spinning, you're going to have to get used to correcting the tilt in a different way. It makes you a little bit more precise in the fact that since the yo-yo is spinning in a different way, doing some of your conventional tricks may cause the yo-yo to turn in different ways, so practicing its front style actually makes you a much better player. The last thing I want to touch base on is jerking the yo-yo like that. Some people perceive it to look unsmooth, ugly, etc., but in reality it actually makes some tricks look cooler because it's like a bouncing motion. Like, experiment with jerkiness and hops to get into certain mounts. Like, that would be like a jerky kind of 1.5, or double or nothing. Even the same thing for Houdini. Don't be afraid of popping and hopping all over the place. It's like Quijibo, but, you know, getting innovative with it. Or try doing things like landing on completely different strings, string wrapping, like bearing wraps, because then you can actually add to bearing wraps, because when you do certain things, it may seem unsmooth to begin with, like, you know, but you can generally gradually smooth things out and create other ways to do it, because boingy boing isn't the smoothest trick when you first learn it, but when you smooth it out, it looks really nice. So if you give more jerky tricks a chance, you can actually make them appear more beautiful than just string tricks and slacks.